Hi everyone, I thought I would come on the video today to talk to you about the different types of IRB reviews. So IRB stands for Institutional Review Boards, and they're the ones who usually approve of different types of studies before they take place. So let's jump into it. So, we are talking about the IRB. The Institutional Review Board is a group or a committee of people who are formally designated by an institution to review and monitor biomedical research involving human subjects. So, if you have a study that you want to gather information from human subjects, whether it's their biological samples or their opinions, or you're just gathering any type of information whatsoever from humans, then you do need to have your study approved by the Institutional Review Board if you are conducting research in a research institution like a university or an academic center. So, an IRB has people from all walks of life. You are going to have skilled faculty who know about the research and have a good idea of how studies are meant to be designed. You're also going to have staff members that maybe handle the administrative part of, filing IRB claims and all those types of things. An institutional review board could also have students, or it could have members of the local community. Because one thing about studies, especially in the United States, is that we want our studies to be representative of people of all walks of life. So, for example, if you want to have a study and you want the study to be diverse, then you might want to get people from the local community, like people with African American descent or Hispanic or people who are indigenous. You might want to have their opinion to make sure that the study is culturally sensitive and culturally competent. So the IRB has people from all walks of life, and it's usually a formal body that approves research for studies on human beings, and they're housed within your universities or academic medical centers, or really any biomedical place where research is taking place on humans. So the IRB can have different types of review. So remember, the IRB is a committee, so you present the research study design to them, and they're the ones to review it and let you know whether they're approving the study to be taking place or not. So a study can either be reviewed as exempt, or it can go through an expedited review with the IRB, or it would sometimes warrant a convened review. So for these different types of reviews, there's increasing risk to the human subjects. So the exempt review, as you can guess, has minimal risk to human subjects. And then the studies that might go into convened review, otherwise known as full committee or full board review, those ones have the most risk to human subjects. So starting with the exempt review, these are studies that are designed to have extremely minimal risk to the study participants. So that means that it might mean that there isn't any vulnerable population being studied. So these studies don't really involve minors or children. It wouldn't involve people who are mentally compromised, who can't make decisions for themselves. And it definitely will involve like pregnant women, unborn children, prisoners. Those populations are not, going to be considered for these types of studies. And also, these studies don't really gather extremely personal information. So it won't gather information like, a person's name or address. It won't gather something that's like a direct identifier that if you see that data, you'll be able to link it to the study participant. None of those things are usually gathered. Additionally, the method at which the data is collected has minimal risk to the participants. So maybe in the process of gathering data, maybe your interview questions are they're very vague or very general, so they won't pose a psychological risk to the participants, or it's not going to involve a risk of injury. So if there's any type of data being gathered in the form of like injection or biopsy, then those ones won't be characterized as exempt review studies. We're talking about really basic, really simple studies that have minimal risk to the study participants. So what would usually happen is for this type of review, you would basically give this information on the study design to an IRB member who is experienced, and they'll be able to determine whether the study is eligible to be exempt from IRB review. Then you also have your expedited review. Expedited means you're not really going to go through all the bureaucracy or all the loops. You're not going to jump through so many hoops to get your study reviewed, but it will still need to be reviewed by the IRB. So these are studies that have some degree of risk, but then the risk is a manageable risk that isn't very significant or very potentially damaging to the study participants. So the data is more sensitive. So the data being gathered in this study is more sensitive than the studies under exempt review, but then it's still not extremely sensitive. It's just more sensitive. And then there's even more of a risk to the participants regarding data collection. So there might be more of a mental risk or physical risk or financial risk when you're gathering data from your human study participants. But then it's also not going to be like a very significant risk. So you're not going to be hemorrhaging money from the participants for the sake of this study, or there isn't going to be any significant mental distress or physical risk to the patients, or sorry, to the participants. It's just a more elevated risk. So this type of study, we still wanted to go into IRB review, but then it's only going to be a limited number of members who will review and approve the study plan. And then you have the convened review. So convened review is where all the or where majority of the members will have to convene and have a meeting about the study, because the study design will have a high risk to the participants. So that might involve risks for populations that might not be able to have full autonomy. So they might not be able to make full decisions either because of their age or their mental or physical status, or because of where they're housed. For example, minors, pregnant women, prisoners, people with impaired decision-making ability. These are people who are vulnerable, and so they do need to be more protected. And so these studies, for these populations, we do need to have a full review to make sure that everything is, protecting the participants to the best of their ability. And then there's also the fact that these studies have increased risk, very significant risk of physical injury and privacy invasion. It is worth noting that behavioral studies don't usually go through convened review. Most times they do expedited review, but biological studies, so studies for biomedical research, cancer studies, studies on very vulnerable populations will most likely go through convened review because they see the risk that could go through the risk to the patients or the risk to the participants that could take place if caution is not taken. Okay, so for these type of reviews, the IRB members will have to have a meeting. They'll have to convene and discuss the study design and make sure that the study is being taken very seriously and is taking place in a way that is protecting the vulnerable population and minimizing risk while maximizing beneficence. So making sure you're getting the most benefits while reducing the risk to the best of your ability. And so this study will only take place if majority of the members in the IRB approve the study. Okay, so those are the different types of reviews that will take place in the IRB, but the IRB is always watching you. So it's important that you always make sure your study is compliant with the IRB. So any changes that you make post IRB approval, you must report it to the IRB, and they must approve the change before you implement that change into your study, or else there might be consequences if you take action in your study and make changes to your study without checking in with the IRB. The IRB will always monitor the studies to make sure that the studies are compliant and to make sure that the participants of the studies are being taken care of. Because when it comes to the IRB, their goal is to make sure that their human studies are protecting the humans and making sure that everybody is conducting themselves in a very good and proper way and taking care of the human participants, and also preserving the human autonomy and the human dignity.